Fun part is now I do have the Mad dashboard, and it does look like we are live.
All right.
So there we are. We are debuting a show here. This is the Awesemo Odds show, and if you'll note, there is an Awesemo Odds Twitter feed. You may recognize that and may wonder, like me, when did I subscribe to the Awesemo Twitter feed, the Awesemo Odds Twitter feed? Ben, that's the old Fanvice account.
Yep.
Well
Yeah.
done. Well done. To reappropriate those several thousand followers. I was happy with it. It didn't hurt anything. So if you wonder and you start to see this, that's what we did. Because as Awesemo assumed most of the Fanvice content and operating team here, we went live under the Awesemo banner, but they folded in various things because we had created a relatively strong brand there under Fanvice, particularly with our projections. So that is how you ended up subscribing, whether you realized you did or not, to the Awesemo Odds Twitter feed. Ben, we haven't done a show in like literally forever. I had the pleasure of doing like the very first show that you had. It was a podcast with you and Andrew, and we did 4 or 5 podcasts. I coached you guys up, and then you guys spread your wings and flew over to being with Pat Mayo.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's this is fun though. I'm excited to do this. Obviously the site has a ton of DFS stuff, but we're starting to do some betting things, and obviously we're not here. Unfortunately, I can't promise just here's some picks, but we do want to talk about the games and have some fun with it.
Yes, so we're in sort of a unique position today, and going forward, we're going to develop this show with you, the Awesemo fans, the Awesemo viewers, as we're going through this. So this should be a lot of fun for everyone. This week, we do, of course, have some college football. And we have some NFL, so that's going to be what we're focusing on. Depending on what the events are, as we get to the playoffs, they tend to put the player props and such out earlier because those get more action for the final playoffs. For now, we don't have anything quite as exciting like that, but we do have some college games here. We're going to look for a little crowd participation. We'd like to hear what y'all have to say with, oh gosh, did I say y'all? I've been in Virginia long enough now, Ben. That was never in my vernacular when I was in Washington State. But apparently now it's sneakers, not tennis shoes, because I used to call them tennis shoes. It's soda, not pop. If you ask for pop, they think you're asking for pot.
Yeah, soda New York thing too. No pop here.
And apparently y'all has crept in, just slid in there under the radar. But in any event, let's talk about that. Let's go with the Virginia game here first while I'm getting some more of my links up. The first one, we were laughing pre-show. I thought this was kind of a semi-championship weekend, and I like to play the ESPN College Pick'em with some of my friends, and I was surprised that there was another week this week, because normally once it gets to the league title rounds, they stop putting up the content. But I was looking at it today. I was making picks, Boise State and Ohio State, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, this must be part of the whole championship teams. And then I got down to Virginia Tech hosting the Marshall Thundering Herd, and I'm like, what the hell? Virginia Tech's 5-6. They've shot themselves in the foot so many times, as they always do. I live amongst many Hokies here in Northern Virginia, but they're taking on Marshall, who's 8-3, and I was like, Ben, what's going on here? And Ben reminded me. Well, there was this weather event. Tell us about the weather event here, Ben.
Yeah, so we remember, obviously, Josh, who good friend of the show, of course. He was one of the many affected by Florence. When Florence swept through, that week of college football got a little ugly for that East Coast. So there was a handful of games, teams, they wanted either to reschedule or get another game. For Virginia Tech's sake, they're 5-6, so they're probably trying to just win this game, get bowl eligible. Because it has been a somewhat rocky year in Blacksburg.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are following along, that particular game, we're looking for a few upset type situations, or maybe a way to get away from the masses, or maybe there is just some options here where the masses know what's up. So maybe you want to talk money line. There's a variety of ways you can make some bets here. So what we're going to do is slowly educate everybody on how to do this. And Ben, who has been doing this for several years, some of y'all thought he was just the golf guy. But no, he plays high stakes fantasy football, daily fantasy football. Ben dabbles in the luxury box. There's the occasional foray into the Thunderdome, the nosebleed stuff. He plays in a weekend what I play in a month. So it's good times here. But Ben, you've actually carved out a nice little niche for yourself in all things daily fantasy sports, but you've also done a lot of college football and basketball wagering in your time, and this is one of your little specialties.
Yeah, I mean, I love, obviously, now that the sites, they're creeping back. I thought we would never see college football or basketball again on DraftKings. Fortunately for New York is banned, so it's a little tough to play each and every week, but I do enjoy betting. College sports, there's so many games. I think you can find some softer lines here and there. NFL is obviously really tough. It's fun to bet. It's not like I don't, but it's more for, take a stab here and there. But yeah, this is a fun week for college. Obviously, with the playoff, we got a handful of games that are going to determine who that fourth team is. And then a couple interesting games. Your Huskies play tonight against Utah for the Pac-12. We got the MAC championship. So there's a pretty good slate for the last week of college football.
Absolutely, and it kind of caught me off guard. I did not realize that the Washington Huskies were playing tonight. Now, that was an exciting game. The Apple Cup last Friday. Of course, the game started at 8:30 Eastern. I made it till halftime, recorded the second half, and I was up at 7 in the morning watching the rest of that game. I don't stay up so late so well anymore, Ben, without the aid of my favorites, soda beverages. But if I have too many of those, then I'm up till 3 or 4 in the morning, and that's a different issue that makes it even worse. So normally I try to go without the caffeine stimulation, but I'd really like to see tonight's game. So I think it'll be a little harder to avoid knowing the score on that. So I will definitely be popping some tasty Diet Pepsi around 7 o'clock so I can make it through those games. But looking at Virginia Tech here, I kind of am fine with if people are into that one. I think that Marshall is the team I would want to consider, just because Virginia Tech gets in their own head a lot. They usually start out well and then play some ranked team within their first 3 games in technically oftentimes a neutral site such as FedEx Field or one of the other stadiums in this area. Sometimes they'll play up in Maryland, etc. And they usually lose those to something like a top 10 ranked Boise State or some of the other teams that they get to come and play them early on. This one is a little bit different in that they are 3.5 point favorites at the moment. That's basically when you're the home team, you generally, and you can speak more to this, it's the kind of the unwritten thing that you get approximately a baseline of a field goal advantage for being at home. Is that generally hold true in college football as well as pros?
Yeah, obviously being at home certainly helps, college stadiums, especially, the good teams, they pack them in. Lane Stadium, good place to play, tough place to play. This year it's been bad. And, talent always trumps out. This is a game I don't have a ton of interest in either way. I would lean with the Hokies personally, just because of the bowl narrative thing. They need to win this game if they want to make a bowl. They're used to making bowls. Obviously, this has been a very down year. They lost their quarterback early in the year, and it's been kind of clawing back. They had their chances, really haven't gotten anything going. But, Marshall, to tell you the truth, not a team I've seen a ton of. They've had a decent year. Obviously, their schedule's a lot weaker. They're 8-3. They're secure in terms of they'll be going to a bowl. This game doesn't mean nearly as much to them as it means to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And mine's more just, I've seen it so many times where Virginia Tech just, they tend to implode. They're not as strong. And I'm a fan of theirs, because whenever you go over to your friend's house on Saturdays for a barbecue, invariably this is the team that's on. Or the game that's on. So I've watched, Frank Beamer over the years, et cetera, all of that. So I think they're a very fine team. Marcus Vick, when I was out here, he was there. Michael Vick had already graduated, I think. Yeah, he was in the pros at that point. But so I followed them on and off for the better part of a decade. And generally they're a solid team. They get some great talent, but they just institutionally are a little bit fragile. They're not the we're going to grit one out and win this one. So that's kind of where I lean on that. One of the questions we have here in the chat is, what do you think about UFC being in the playoffs. And of course, that is the University of Central Florida. And what did they crown themselves? The undefeated team last
champs.
year? Yeah, I can't quite call them the national champs, but I thought they had a valid point. But they weren't technically in the bowl playoff. They're on the outside looking in again. What do you think would need to happen for them to make it this year? I thought they had a better case last year, even though they're still undefeated this season.
Agree with that completely. I think they were clearly a better team last year. They have no chance to make it, unfortunately for them. Not Milton getting hurt is irrelevant in that case. Now they really have no chance, obviously, because, by far their most important player is seriously injured. But we'll see what they do against Memphis tomorrow. I don't know if they'll be able to scrape by. It's tough. I mean, for them to get in, it's probably going to have to be, for a non-Power 5 team, it's going to have to probably be 6 teams. It's just really hard unless you schedule. The only way I could see it happening long term is if you schedule someone early in the year in non-conference, and you obviously got to beat them handily, and that team turns out to be really good. So if they played someone and then that team runs the table, it will bolster that resume, just because when you get into their conference schedule, there's not enough kind of meat on that schedule to really move up. Teams will just end up jumping them regardless if they stay undefeated.
All right. Now, how familiar, and we'll just do a couple more college games, then we'll talk pros. How familiar are you with the Pac-12? Because we do have the Stanford Cardinal taking on the California Golden Bears here. This one is actually in Berkeley. So it's got the Bears with, let me just make sure I have the right spread here, because I'm seeing Stanford in a lot of models saying that they ought to be the team that wins. And unless I got this backwards, so now I want to go look at it.
Yeah, they're about a 3-point favorite. I'm seeing.
Okay, they are. I had written it down backwards. I had Cal as the favorite. So anyway, so Cal's at home, which that's one of those. These two teams hate each other. Stanford's season ticket phone line, Ben, for the last 40 years has been 1-800-BEAT-CAL.
There you go.
I'm not making this up.
No, I mean, it's not surprising. This is obviously the band is on the field game.
Yes.
Two teams, the Pac-12, obviously I don't see as much because I live in New York. Games are on late. Oregon was the team that I really thought would come out. Obviously they did not. These two teams, pretty gritty. Cal, I thought, had a pretty good year for them. I didn't expect as much. Stanford seemed more disappointing. Bryce Love did not have a good year for sure. This is one, honestly, I would lean, again, not a strong take here. Doubt I would bet it, but I would lean with the home team. I would go with Cal. They seem to have something at home. Stanford, it's just been a kind of an ugly year. They start out good. They won a game they shouldn't have at Oregon, and then they were rolling. And then they started stumbling. They got clipped by both Washington teams. Last couple, games, yeah, they've looked all right, but it was against Oregon State and UCLA, probably two. I mean, Oregon State's clearly the worst team in the Pac-12. UCLA, not exactly a juggernaut. And being on the road, that certainly hurts in a rivalry game like this.
All right, last one I want to touch on, and this is good because it got a question from Ricky Geiger here in the chat. He is saying, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is Oklahoma's defense? Now, Oklahoma is an interesting team in and of itself, because we say, how bad is their defense? Well, they're projected to give up 35 points in this game. They're favored by 8.5. It's about a 77 over under, depending on which book that you look at. And their quarterback, Ben, Kyler Murray, has said, you know what, I'm not going to go to the Pro Football League, but I'm going to go play pro baseball, because that was I think he was the 8th or 9th selection in the MLB draft. So he has said, even though I think I can make it in the NFL, this is going to be kind of my career winding down here. Technically, I think he still has one more year of college quarterbacking eligibility, but he said he's going to go take the baseball path. Do you think that leads to a letdown? Do you think that's an emotional uplift for this game? We know there's going to be about a dozen touchdowns scored. So starting first, what do you think of the defense? And then we'll talk about Kyler Murray. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I can honestly say that Oklahoma has the worst defense I've ever seen of a team that's this good. It's unreal. They cannot tackle. They cannot stop anyone, but their offense, they've developed a narrative of how they can play. Obviously, when you have Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, the running backs, they lost their key running back, and Sermon and these other guys are just, Brooks doesn't seem to affect them. So the offense is a juggernaut. They can't stop anyone. I don't want to say stunned, but on the same time, I would be absolutely shocked if Oklahoma lost tomorrow. Texas already beat them in the Cotton Bowl. If, of course, Oklahoma has to win this game to have a chance to go to the playoff, I really expect them to do enough on defense to keep it, in range, and then their offense to do the heavy lifting. I think Oklahoma wins pretty convincingly tomorrow.
All right. On the Kyler Murray front, I think it's great that he's choosing baseball. For me, it's funny. I used to just be my entire life football, major fan. But about 15, 20 years ago, I read an article in Sports Illustrated, and they were talking about how these linemen were retiring at age 35, and by the time they were 40, they were getting hip replacements, and they had the skeletal structure in their joints of a 60 to 75-year-old person. And at that point, I said that was in the same range with Robert Smith, who was a running back for the Vikings and Ohio State. And he said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to retire. And he was kind of at the apex of his career. And he said, you know what, I'm interested in medical school. I'm interested in doing this other stuff. And he just kind of walked away. We saw Barry Sanders walk away, etc. At that point, I just said, you know what, anybody who walks away, I'm good with. I understand it. That just the beating these guys take. They've gotten bigger since then and faster. I mean, we used to say, oh my God, Refrigerator Perry. His nickname was the Biscuit because Mike Ditka said he was a biscuit away from 300 pounds. Well, he played at over 300 pounds, but that was kind of their joke. Now it's like a badge of honor. If you're under 300 pounds, you're undersized, whereas before you were a behemoth. This is just insane. So people walking away, particularly if they have other venue or for sports or some other outlet, I'm totally fine with that. How do you feel about that when it comes to some of these marquee college athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. Obviously, baseball, the longevity for him, he kind of gave the A's his word that that's what he would do. We'll wait and see. I mean, he is unbelievable. Oklahoma, he controls that offense, obviously, taking over for Baker. And it's a good point in chat. I do think Oklahoma wins. I just said that. But Tom Herman, he really does. Ricky just said this in chat. He has had their number, not just there when he was at Houston. He can scheme them to contain him and force him kind of to throw a little more. Obviously, like I said, CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, these are guys on the DFS side I always look to. High upside, of course. I would really hope that Lincoln Riley can design something tomorrow to not – I mean, if you get beat by Texas twice in the same year and it costs you the playoff, that would be a pretty bad blemish.
Absolutely. You got to love these guys getting fired. Mac Brown making an appearance again. I'm kind of against that one. The game's passed some of these guys by. Even the college game, I mean, since that's where a lot of innovation happens. So looking up and down here, finishing up our college aspect, we do have Georgia, Alabama. Was that number one and number 3, depending on your poll, number 4. Yet Bama's favored by 2 touchdowns. We account for the spread when we're doing some wagering, Ben. Which side of that one would you be on?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to ever say go against, but the one game where betting against Bama was pretty easy was the Citadel of all teams because they were about a 60-point underdog, and that triple option. But honestly, in this one, I would take the points. Alabama's incredible. Now they haven't, obviously Tua has transformed the offense. The defense is always good enough. But I will say, their schedule, not that it's been soft. They went into Death Valley and LSU, shut them out. But LSU's offense, it's anemic at best. I expect Georgia to be able to have some success. Obviously, they played last year in the national championship. If they want to use Fields as the backup quarterback a little, they've got Swift, Elijah Holyfield in the backfield. They've got weapons. The defense is good enough to at least give Tua some problems. I'm not saying that Georgia wins by any stretch, but 2 touchdowns in a competitive game, I would take the points in this one.
Do you think it's going to hurt much by this game being in the Mercedes-Benz Center? Since that, for those of you following along, that it's in kind of the replacement of the Georgia Dome. So it's in Atlanta. Hi, University of Georgia. Oh, gosh. they're down there too. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure both. Alabama travels plenty well. They'll be ready. I'm sure they'll be certainly plenty. Athens is a lot closer than Tuscaloosa, but they'll both easily get there. And it's just going to be a game. Ricky again just said this. If they can get some heat on Tua and force him, if he sits back there, they've got all these receivers, whether it's Waddle, Jerry, a bunch of them, that it's going to be tough to stop. But if they can put pressure on them, not let Alabama run the ball, and really force Tua to make some quicker decisions, I think they can hang in. Obviously, Georgia style points are going to be important this week for them. Ohio State, Oklahoma. Winning is one thing. If Georgia wins, they're clearly in, obviously. But if Georgia loses it like an OT game, and that could possibly benefit them in terms of depending on what Ohio State and Oklahoma end up doing.
All right. Let's see in the chat here. Julius says that anybody on the Clemson schedule, UCF, could foul with their quarterback, perhaps. But I would have been full throated defense, just saying, why are they not in the playoffs last year? If we had been doing this show last year, but this year, you just can't get behind them. Sorry.
No, they're not. I've seen them play a lot, and they're a fine team. Heupels, they're interesting. They make good plays. I think they get the most out of the talent, to be honest. They would have some serious problems against not the playoff teams, against most of the quality teams. Obviously, without Milton, they would have zero chance.
All right. As we transition on over here to the pros, this show's going to be up here for a couple days. Of course, it'll be useful. So, reminder: we've got a ton of content here over the weekend at Awesemo.com. Kicking off Friday tipping off with basketball on Friday evening. We do have the deeper dive with Adam Scherer and Dave Lochran. That will be at 5 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, you'll get Live Till Lock with Fast Eddie Fear and Chris Spags. On Saturday morning, there will be Adam and myself discussing a leisurely walk through the 7 or 8 game slate of NBA. That'll be at about 11. We have the Evan Silva show where Alex Baker, you guys know him as Awesemo, but Alex Baker will be on with Evan Silva and with Chris Spags talking the last minute stuff it's kind of fun getting Evan at the very end of all of his analysis, Ben, because he's had time to formulate all his thoughts. We have all the practice reports. We have everything when he's coming on the show. So that has been a fun show to watch. That one is going to be on Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening, there will be a live before lock with Fast Eddie Fear. And then Sunday, we've got not one, but 2 NFL shows you will be on with Dave Lochran. Also, you guys know him better as a Lofty D. That will be at around 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. And then when you guys are off the air, then you get Josh Engelman and Chris Spags taking you down the home stretch there up till final lock. And then depending on if you guys can coax him out there on social media, Eddie may do a Periscope. There's no guarantee for that on Sundays because the poor guy, we got to give him a day of rest now and then. But I bet if you ask nicely, you might be able to sneak him in for a 6th show during the week. Ben, would you like to do work every single day?
No, that's tough living. Even if it is just this, it's nice to have a break here and there for sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about football. So the game I've done a lot of looking at is the Sunday night football game. Now, a lot of this is not on any of the slates because it's the primetime game. However, if you have registered, like I like to do for DraftKings, and you can do this on FanDuel as well, but if you register for the Thursday to Monday games, you can get the players on the Sunday night game, which is usually either Sunday night or Monday night. It's going to be one of the highest scoring games of the week. So that's a fun little strategy to do. You can also play Sunday through Monday night, and you'll get this game as well. This game, to me, shapes up as a fantastic one. Austin Eckler, while not cheap on the single game slates, they've priced him appropriately, is a little cheaper than expected. Not a screaming discount, but cheaper than expected for these games that encompass the Sunday night game. So I have just a quick highlight. My cash game at the moment, Ben, is looking like Eckler, one of Juju or Brown, and then probably Ben Roethlisberger. Now, if I take Ben Roethlisberger out, I will probably have both Juju and and Antonio Brown, so I can capture all of the goodness of the Steelers' passing offense. But this game shapes up interestingly. There's a 3.5-point favorite home field advantage here for Pittsburgh. They are number one in the AFC Central. We have the Chargers, who are in the mix for the playoff hunt as well. This is one of those nice marquee games. We've got quarterbacks combined. They have 30 plus years of NFL experience. We could fill out essentially the skill positions for an all-star team amongst these guys. And Eckler's stepping into Melvin Gordon's spot. He injured his MCL, or it's unstabilized enough that they don't really want to play him for the next couple of weeks because they got their eye on the playoffs. Why they played him last week against Arizona, I don't know. But this is shaping up to be a fantastic game. Looking at it just game versus game, which team do you think will win? And then if you were doing for the money line aspect, and then if you're doing a points aspect, would you take the points, or would you cede the field goal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big game. Not just, obviously, it's not on the main slate like you said, but the showdown slate will be, I'm sure, hopping on Sunday night. Melvin Gordon, yeah, that was a tough one. Obviously, that he got hurt on a stupid, in hindsight, it was a terrible play call. They did not need to run a trick play there. They're going to need him back if they have any chance long term. I think they struggle here a bit. I'm on the Chargers bandwagon, on a macro level. I like that team a lot, but going into Heinz Field in this spot, obviously the Steelers coming off, it was an ugly game. They went to Mile High. They had a chance at the end there, bad throw by Roethlisberger. I think the Steelers kind of controlled this game. The Chargers defense is getting healthier. Obviously Bosa is back. So maybe they put some heat on, but overall, I just think the weapons on the Steelers side is a little too much, especially if the Chargers end up becoming one-dimensional. Eckler's obviously can catch passes, and he is good. I just don't know if they're going to be able to run him, as effectively as a lead back if they spell him with Justin Jackson. I'm not sure how effective that'll be on the ground.
Justin Jackson. I did a little research on this because I do write, and this is a free article out there. We do them for Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and Monday Night Football. You can get those at awesemo.com. Justin Jackson, Northwestern Wildcat, 4 straight campaigns of 1,100 yards or more rushing. Been pretty impressive. 200 receptions in his college career, 600 receiving yards. I think 120 receptions and 600 receiving yards. So kind of an extension of the passing game. But he is relatively, as Eckler is kind of a discounted version of Melvin Gordon, Jackson is a homeless man's version of Eckler. But
it's tough. Yeah, I mean,
just saying, primetime slate, he's super cheap. You want your contrarian option, in-game injury. There you go.
No, yeah, I mean, from a DFS side, obviously it's a little different, but it's just a situation. This is a tough game for the Chargers. It would say a lot if they're able to come in there without Melvin Gordon against the team. Obviously, the Steelers need this game as well. They have the North somewhat in control just because the Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens are all, they have various problems. But for me, it would be the home team in this one.
All right. What game is catching your eye? You're looking for perhaps some inefficiencies. Sometimes it's called a live dog, meaning it's an underdog or someone perhaps the public is not really on, but you think they have a chance for the upset, whether it is against the points or if it's perceived. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we did the show yesterday. If you did watch Three Fellas last night, I was on, not that I like the Cowboys, but I did think they would win that game, and they did.
I believe your co-hosts both had a chuckle at your expense when you said that, too.
Yeah, I mean, it was I've had some bold ones there that fell definitely flat, so it was nice to get one. I don't see anything. Most of the real big spreads are against teams that I have a hard time even though they're on the road. You look at the Rams, you look at the Chiefs, they're both laying a ton. Not a huge upset call, but I think the Giants at home, they're getting 4 plus 170 on the money line. Not a terrible spot. They've been playing better. I know the Bears defense is serious business and Eli could struggle there. But if Trubisky sits again, Chase Daniel, I know he looked solid on Thanksgiving, but I could see this being a spot where this would kind of grind it out. Over under is only 44.5. Giants could win a close one there.
All right. Gonna drop a little nugget here. So this is a little practice. If you make some comments, we love, we got Ricky Geiger leading the charge here. We got a nice little back and forth. But the more activity that we get here, hi Seth, I see you too, in the chat, the better it helps our YouTube standings. Of course, the easy way to do it is just give us a little like, click that thumbs up. And then because you are going to see more and more shows continue here from Awesemo, if you click the little bell, you can subscribe to the channel and it'll send you a little notification if you have notifications enabled each time we go live with one of our shows. Because what will happen sometimes, particularly as we get into these imbalanced NBA schedules, is sometimes we're going to start the deeper dive a little early so we can get those guys getting through double-digit games for basketball and still leave enough time for Fast Eddie to get a full hour up before lock. But you get in the afternoons, you have Ben and Andrew from A to B. You guys cover a variety of topics. Give us a little, as we're plugging the various Awesemo offerings, what do you have here for A to B? Do you have kind of a set show? Because I see sometimes you guys are talking golf, sometimes it's football, sometimes it's the showdown slate, sometimes it's turkey and what goes along with it for major holidays. What do you got here on the A to B show, Ben?
Yeah, we try to mix it up. Obviously, we have showdown slates to talk about on Mondays. We do that. If there's golf, Tuesday for sure. And then, on Fridays, it's just a straight NFL and college football breakdown. We'll talk a little about the game tomorrow night or from yesterday, but it's mostly, position by position, who we like for DFS and the upcoming college slate for tomorrow.
Excellent. Well, the little surprise is, and you're going to hear more about it on shows starting today, but we have the 24 days of giveaways. I'm not supposed to mention that until December 1st, but it's your old pal Emac. Sometimes I forget, get a little excited, but check it out. There's going to be different ways to enter in this promotion, and it will be comments left on iTunes, YouTube, etc. There will be full descriptions of what's going to be going on there, but just an easy to practice. Click that little like button, click that subscribe button there on YouTube, and you will get in good practice for what's coming up. Now, Ben, we're going to turn this over to chat for a moment. So what I'd like to have you guys in chat mention is, who do you think are some of your live dogs? Who do you think are some of the teams that potentially have a decent chance to win? Now, don't spam a bunch of names, but if you give a little I think this, we'll talk about that. So we'll let those come in. One of the things that's very popular, Ben, is over-unders. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the betting things this year that both in football and we've also seen it in basketball, things are tamping down again in football as teams are getting dinged up, weather's getting colder, etc. But we just saw overs hitting constantly this year with the new passing rules and such. Do you look at over-unders? Because at one point, this was a few weeks ago, and I know it's normalized a little bit, but the overs were hitting at almost 60%. Now, that's been adjusted because Vegas has been taking a lot of things into account, but it's swung the other way. And now unders are kind of getting a little bit more love. It'll, of course, normalize. But is that something that you look at from a wagering aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly take a look, just obviously for DFS purposes as well. More so with that, I'm more prone to bet one where there's a real outlier, like if there's a bad snow game. We saw your Washington Huskies, perfect example. They went to Pullman last week. It was snowing. Washington State really can't play in the snow. That took them out. Of course, the total somewhat reflected that, but usually it's not enough. Similar with Oklahoma football. They price the overs up, but it's hard they can't price it at the over under can't be 90. That's rarely, if ever, do you see something like that. So I'll take a look. It's tough in the NFL. Obviously, the range is usually lower. If you get one, the Rams Chiefs was 64, and that was the highest we've basically ever seen. College is a little different. You want to look at pace. You want to look at the weather. And if you just think, the game gets up and down, obviously you can lean to the over, but all in all, it's not something that I bet too often.
All right. A couple people here in chat have brought up Carolina
Okay.
Well, they're favored by 3.5, so I'm going to assume that they think that potentially they're susceptible to the loss there. They're heading into Tampa Bay. They will be playing the Buccaneers for the second time this season. I believe it was, oh gosh, was it like week 3 or week 4? It was a while. I believe it was a while back when they played. But Carolina coming off a loss at home to the Seahawks of all teams. They're reeling a little bit, but we saw that their offense is absolutely magnificent. Their defense could be a little suspect. Tampa Bay, no defense. I don't know. We should no longer call it the Tampa 2. They've lost that. But Tampa, no defense. But their offense is pretty tricky if they could ever pick a quarterback to stick with them. Do you realize that the Tampa quarterback combined, I'm sure you've heard this stat, they have the second most fantasy points behind only Patrick Mahomes this season. That is just amazing. What do you like here from a wagering standpoint? Do you think that there's some room there for a Carolina being upset?
Yeah, I mean, a couple weeks ago I would have said definitely not. But the Panthers it's been a bad stretch. They gave a game away in Detroit, gave a game away, I thought, against Seattle. They should have won both of those. Obviously, they got blown out at Pittsburgh. I think the line's pretty fair. It seems kind of trappy, to be honest. I think you'll see the majority of the money come in on the Panthers. Road favorites always, that's always a little dicey just because, that's being at home. We saw last night. Look what just happened. Not that I'm trying to draw one game sample size, but it's not a game I'm looking to bet. I think there's easier ones out there. If I had to bet it, I would probably take Carolina. After all, they need this game desperately. I think Cam, McCaffrey, and them still can do enough. And, Jameis, yeah, he's great for fantasy purposes, but for real life, he's not the best. Obviously, he's prone to turning it over and over.
All right. We've got a couple more games here. Apparently, I have the same chair as Seth's grandmother. We'll see if you can see this says Respawn, and I read this gaming review. It was from Saucy Gma. I wonder if that's his grandma, but that's why I picked this chair out. I saw this over there on when I was doing a little internet shopping. So 5-star rating from Saucy Gma. I wonder if that's his grandma. Looking at a couple other teams that are popping up here, they're liking the Rams in Seattle to be in some teasers, Ben. Now, teasers are, maybe we'll save that for another show. That could be a nice little A to B thought, how you talk about taking points from one game as line and being able to apply them to another, putting those games together for a teaser. That's kind of the extreme example. Parlay is the other one that is kind of intriguing. So just hit real quickly on teasers, because I see that coming up in chat, and I know that's something that a lot of people don't understand, and it took me a while to fully figure out how those worked. And it's like yet another game within a game.
Yeah, I mean, teasers are interesting, obviously. So what it is, basically, you're able, depending on how many, there's different point teasers. So say it's a 10-point teaser. You take the spread and you move it 10 points your way. Obviously, the payout's a lot different for like a 3-team teaser. It could pay close to even money, something like that. Muhuka, too, sharp guy. See him in chat all the time. I agree. I actually have some teasers with those two already. I don't see any way Seattle at home loses. Rams in Detroit, I mean, on the road, there's always a chance, but the offense is so good. So if you are looking for teasers, they're going to be popular choices. And then you have a variety of options in terms of other teams, but that is one way to get exposure. Laying 10 points is a totally different animal than picking a team to win.
All right. I see some people talking about actually both sides here of Cincinnati and Denver. Now, Denver is going to Cincinnati. Denver, I don't really want to say they're a mess, but look at their quarterback situation. Not great. Talk about quarterback situations. Bengals don't even have one. They now have 2 ineffective head coach types on the sideline. They have an owner that just prefers to stick with whatever's familiar. Doesn't have to be good or not. So we've got some mega dysfunction going on there with the Bengals. But without Andy Dalton, they've been decimated across the skill position. AJ Green is doubtful. We know Tyler Eifert's been out this year. Gio Bernard's missed a ton of time. They've got some holes on both the offensive and defensive lines. Denver, on the other hand, they've got a little bit of a youth movement going on here. They've got Cortland Sutton, who they've elevated somewhat with that trade of Demaryius Thomas. They're the running back undrafted from Colorado State University, Philip Lindsay, has looked really good over the last couple weeks. All of a sudden, their skill positions, aside from quarterback, look pretty solid. But I don't know if I can trust either side of this game. What are you thinking of here? Because to me, it would feel that, well, Driscoll's not going to get it done, but Denver's not really a big favorite.
No, yeah, Denver comes in. It's like a 5-point spread. They're on the road. This is the NFL. It can change in an instant. The Bengals have looked awful. Denver's coming off a big win. This is a game that I can tell you for certain I'm not going to bet it. If I did, I would bet the Bengals, though. At home, I know Driscoll, but AJ Green should be back. I think they can rely on Mixon. And being away from Mile High is a big deal for a team like the Broncos. I would take the points. Obviously, those are valuable points. And if Driscoll doesn't turn it over, just plays kind of a conservative game, I think they can get by. We'll see. That defense has been, Baker absolutely shredded them. But I'm still willing to roll with the Bengals in a spot like that if I was forced to.
All right. I can see that. I'm not sure did you say moo hookah? I mean, I'm just gonna call them the hookah because I know what a hookah is, and it's a fun thing to say, and they're kind of cool to look at. The traditional kind, not the eco-friendly green kind, if you know what I mean. But he's got a couple other questions, or he's got a couple other opinions in here, and you can see that he is quite the gamer that I'm sure he does stuff here. He says teasers have covered a ton this year. Is that, and I know we just kind of talked about them, but how often do you utilize that sort of wagering, Ben?
Not too often. They have been. Vegas will tell you they've been. These big teams, whether it's the Saints, the Chiefs, the Rams, the Patriots. A lot of people have been using teasers with 3 of them, and just printing money because they've all been rolling. Now, I know a lot of people, I'm sure, tried to start teasers off last night with the Saints, and that's the nature of the beast. So it's tough spots. Obviously, on the road, it's always a little dicier. But I'll use a team here and there. Like, the Seahawks money line for me is a good example. They're obviously, I think the money line is like minus 500. So you're paying a ton of juice. But I do have some straight bets that I kind of parlayed with Seahawks money line. It moves the line from minus 110. So instead of betting 110 to win 100, when you add in that minus 500, it moves it to say plus 115. So now you're betting 100 to win 115. And I just don't see the Seahawks money line adding into a bet is not a big risk for me because at home, they should really roll against the Niners.
All right. The money line's an intriguing thought here. So for those of you that are just coming along that are new to this, that means you are wagering that the team wins outright. There's not a point spread. So what sometimes at all times what you'll have to do is you may have to wager different amounts. So if it's a heavy favorite and they're going to win, you may have to risk $500 to win $600 back, meaning you're only going to profit $100 on that. Conversely, if you liked the other side and you thought, I'm going to get this upset here, I don't care less about the points, I think this team's going to win outright, your $100 could turn into $500 because you're risking an unlikely outcome, or you're backing an unlikely outcome. So we got 2 West Coast teams traveling east, and we're starting to wrap up here. So any other questions, throw them in the chat there, and the YouTube chat is fine. We've got the Rams heading over to Detroit, and we've got Arizona heading to Green Bay. Now, both these teams are playing in 1 o'clock East Coast games. Now that used to be a major deal with the biorhythms, and teams didn't stay as longer on the West Coast, and they seemingly weren't quite as aware or didn't care, or the owners were penny pinching, yada yada yada. Teams are a lot more aware of it. A lot of times they'll start to ease their practice times accordingly when they're in their own time zone and adjust towards the other one. So they try to do little tricks here and there, so it's not always a gimme. But you know what is kind of annoying, and I know this as a Seahawk fan, is these gigantic behemoth dudes getting in a plane, and yes, even though it's a private luxury team plane, these gigantic dudes have to get in an enclosed space that's not that comfortable for multiple hours, Ben. That is almost as bad as being playing earlier, being a little out of your biorhythms, because even though they have their own giant seats, they're still cramped. They've still got time for those aches and pains and backs and hamstrings and all that to cramp up just from sitting in the same position. How much of an effect do you consider the West Coast going to the East Coast for those early games?
Yeah, I mean, it's never ideal.
And Vegas is aware of this, by the way. Just so you know, it's baked in.
They're aware of everything. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff is priced in. And yeah, teams are aware of it on all fronts. You've seen time and time again, teams start slow. It's a 10 a.m. kind of start technically, but, I don't think it overly affects anything. The Rams game, that's a lot of points. I agree. The Lions, Stafford has been awful. Thanksgiving was atrocious. I have no desire to bet against the Rams. I also have no desire to lay double-digit points on the road. Those spreads are tough. You can, if you want to use, say, the Rams and teasers and stuff, I get it. If you have a line and you think, maybe Carry-On comes back and the Lions can, at home put up some fight, sure. But I don't know. I think, Gurley coming back healthy, it's tough. The Rams are just so dynamic on offense. They score so many points. It's tough to go against them in almost any spot at this point.
All right, quick reminder, if you use the promo code Awesemo Odds, all one word, you will get free premium content for everything at awesemo.com for an entire week. That does include Slack, and it also includes the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. Just make sure that you sign up for the 1 week package, select the Fantasy Cruncher package, enter your information, the last box, the last field that you enter, and just use Awesemo Odds, all one word, and that'll get you 1 free week of all content, not just the wagering content that we're coming up with, but you'll get the ownership projections for all the sports, you'll get the fantasy projections for all the sports, the premium articles for everything. And one of the most important things, and I particularly think as we start to see the wagering become more, is you'll get access to a whole group of like-minded gamers in the Slack chat. Now, the one thing that's nice about that is there's not a lot of trolls, because everyone's already invested in they're paying their money. So think of this as your, $1.50, $2 a day social club. But you get a bunch of people that are going to put a ton of effort into stuff, not just the contributors, but the members themselves, that have different things that they like to look at. So if you're someone like me that's just kind of is saying, gosh, it doesn't, heck, Ben, even though New York doesn't allow gaming, I see that Bovada's going to open up.
Yeah, they're back.
They're back, baby. They're back. And that .lv doesn't stand for Las Vegas, by the way. But they're back. Things are getting a little more wide open here. It doesn't seem like people are going crazy. So I want to start dabbling into this. But I may need to reinforce what I'm doing, learn a little bit more slowly, or ask some ideas. The Slack is a perfect way to, in a nice controlled environment, ask a few questions, say, hey, I've thought about this. This is what I'm trying to do. Will that work? I want to do a parlay. This is what I'm thinking. I'd like to try a teaser. I think I see an advantage here. How can I apply that on something else? And I think that's something that if you have time and are not in a big rush, you can ask these questions of both our members and our contributors, and they can help you out from their perspective. Because Ben, has been through the battles. He has stepped literally in every bear trap there is, at least half a dozen times. I'm sure if you could just help one person avoid one bear trap, it puts a smile on your face. It truly does.
Yeah, I got experience with that, sadly. And no, it's true. Obviously, on the site, we're unveiling betting content. I have videos and articles coming out about a lot of the stuff we talked about in terms of concepts, whether it's reverse line movement or hedging, and teasers will be in there. certainly in the future. So, if you're new to betting, if you want to just read some of that, obviously that's a great place to start. And then Slack is always, you can find me in there, always around to talk about, DFS and of course betting, because it is coming and it's fun. If you have a game and you say, I can't find, perfect example for me was, the Bills last week. Even though I'm a huge Josh Allen guy, I didn't really look to him in DFS. I didn't like any of their targets, but I thought they would play well against the Jaguars. So I said, you know what? I'm going to bet the Bills. Can get some action that way. Don't really have to worry about it for DFS. It just didn't seem like a game. So it can be a way to get exposure to a team that you may be high on, even if it's not in DFS.
Very well said. Very well said. And reminder, there's a lot of ways now that are appearing that you can get in on some of this action that previously you couldn't. If you have FanDuel and DraftKings and you're in an appropriate state, you can do sports wagering with them now. If you are in a state that has Thrive Fantasy, which is one of the partner sites we partner with, their game is similar to a bunch of player props all put together, and you get a variety of points for that. Boom Fantasy is something different. So there are a lot of ways you can kind of gain some exposure to this. And frankly, for someone like me that I've never been against gambling, I've never been for it, I never really cared. But as we're applying it to fantasy items that I understand, and I can sometimes see value where there is, or see a foolish spot where there is, and I want to take part in this, that this is definitely a way that you can get in on that. So, there is a whole world that is being opened in front of us. It's not going to be just, is this team going to win or not, or what are the point spreads? And Ben, I think we're going to see some really cool stuff with golf, is my guess, as things circle around into the Hawaii and Bob Hope Classic season.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are endless, of course. And, you do want to be cognizant. If you are playing, shop your lines, which just means look for the best value out there. It's not a universal kind of thing. So you can sometimes get a half a point here, or if they're very juiced, that's probably not the best place to play. But those things, as more and more states legalize, hopefully competition will drive some better lines and shops for people.
Yes, and remember, the entertainment aspect is probably the best way to approach this for now. I see in chat people are mentioning DraftKings and FanDuel's and their lines being not good or not sharp or a bit of a mess. I'm not able to in the state of Virginia here. I mean, I can play on them. I just can't do the sports wagering. But I know I want to say it's DraftKings. They set their number or whatever you'd like to say, and then they don't move it. So they're like, well, we're going to pick this. And you may like it or not, but we're also not going to change it. FanDuel, I think, it tends to move theirs around a little bit more because they sort of were first to market and they had their live little shop. It's not the right way to say it. They had their bookmaking operations set up in a physical location prior to DraftKings. So they seemingly are a little closer to that. But I think we're going to see both of these guys change, or both of these companies change with the market. I hope. Final thoughts as we get on out of here on our inaugural show here.
No, I think it's going to be a fun weekend. Obviously, if you have questions and we didn't get to them, find me in Slack. Happy to talk. And in a couple hours, stop by again. I'll be on From A to B, and then I'm doing Pat Mayo show this week as well, so you can check me out there. A lot of fun. This is a really fun week of sports with college football winding down. College basketball is starting to really gear up. Obviously, NBA and NFL. So it's a fun time to get into DFS, of course, and bet a couple games if you want to have some fun.
All right. With that, gamers, we hope you enjoyed the new show. You can leave comments. Let us know what you'd like to see. You can reach out to us, of course, on Twitter. I'm at EMACDFS. It's at JazzRazDFS. It's at Awesemo Odds. And it is at Awesemo_COM. There are the variety of ways you can reach us. And you can always get us at support at Awesemo.com. That's also an easy way as well. With that, gamers, good luck.